Yes, welcome to the Sharpe Club. It is late on Monday evening, 9 p.m. I know. Why am I up so late? I don't know, but I am. It's because it's supposed to be like the cool Sharpe Club. So just believe it. I'm happy that you are here with me today. We are talking this evening about independent media, about the Twitter files, about are we being banned and censored, and what media do you trust? All the things that are happening for many of us who watch a show like this and other shows just like this. And I'm very lucky. Today, I have with me the man himself, Kit Cabello, the woman herself, Alison Morrow, and a woman and a man, woman himself.
Wow.
Cohen. Wow. How are you guys?
Right off the bat, huh? No, that's good.
I thought it was the best way of making things happen, Spike. That's what I thought. Right off the bat. I am so happy for you guys. If you guys want to follow them, you can. Please check them out on Twitter. You can follow Alison on Alison Morrow TV. You can follow Spike on Real Spike Cohen. And you can follow Kit at Kit Cabello. All of them, please follow them on Twitter if you want to. They're all here. And the question I have to ask everyone here is, when it comes to alternative media or independent media, why in the world why is it such a big deal? Why aren't we no longer just going to CNN or Fox or MSNBC or ABC? Why do we even need us?
Well, I mean, I guess I'll shoot off. I mean, Alison, Spike, please follow afterwards. But from my perspective, the reason why we've seen a rise of independent media, just not only amongst progressives, but libertarians and yes, conservatives and everyone else in between, is because there's the neoliberal narrative that you see on CNN and BSD and MSNBC and Fox News. And that is because there is the neoliberal narrative of support the establishment, turn a blind eye to the military industrial complex, turn a blind eye to bailing out Wall Street and big banks. We're going to have access to these politicians. Shut up, do what we say, don't think for yourself. And many Americans are seeing firsthand, and they've known this for a while, even before 2020, that there is a rise of inflation. There is a clear economic severity impacting millions of us. We have medical bankruptcy, we have student debt crisis, we have all sorts of debt crises happening, and yet our politicians, whether we want to admit it or not, have effectively abandoned us. And all the while, the media isn't really reporting it, but we all know what's happening. And the average citizen, whether they choose to look for it or not, they do know that something is fundamentally wrong with our republic, the way we're being represented at the state and federal level. So that's why independent media exists. And when people hear that voice, like, okay, I am not alone. I know I'm not crazy.
Yeah, but hold on. Kit, there's a big difference though, right? If you go back, say, I don't know, 10 years, 20 years, whatever the number is, independent media for most people was like, oh, that's the kook, that's the weirdo, right? That's the person who doesn't know any better. That's the person who thinks the aliens are sucking on his brain or something, right? That's what people thought of it. It's not that anymore. Has independent media changed? Alison, I mean, this is your world. You literally left the mainstream media to become independent media. Has independent media changed, or has our culture changed?
Both. I think independent media has definitely changed, because when YouTube started, if I had just gotten into it when my mom got me this little camera, I remember graduating from my master's degree and she got me this little camera that said upload direct to YouTube. And I gave it back to her, like, no serious journalist goes on YouTube, Mom. I mean, I would be killing it right now if I had done that. So back then, it was like armpit farting and I don't know, who's that guy, Phil DeFranco. He was like the guy that started the news thing. I mean, he had the whole monopoly on it. I mean, he was like the only guy. And so, of course, now it's like the cool thing to do to quit corporate news. Like you had Ivory Hecker, who just, the middle of her live shot with this sweaty air conditioning repairman behind her, she's like, I'm being censored by my corporate news station. And like, she knew she was going to be able to springboard into this world because it was already there. Like, could she have done that 15 years ago? I don't know. So, I mean, I definitely think it's created a new avenue for sort of ex-corporate news journalists to go out on their own. On the other hand, because I guess it's like, which came first, I guess the chicken or the egg. Yeah. So now that more of us are doing it, it's become a more, I don't know, respected, I guess, place to find alternative views on the news, as also the trust in corporate news legacy press has declined. On the other hand, though, I think it's fair to be skeptical of what's happening in the alternative news world because it's starting to model very similar systematic issues, I think, in some cases of like what I saw when I was in the legacy press.
Yeah, well, because they all want money too, right? Like if you become whatever, as Hardlens Media gets bigger and badder and stronger, and all of a sudden now they get a nice big hardcore, donor, like ExxonMobil wants to be your sponsor all of a sudden, Kit. So all of a sudden they write you a big check for $5 million to shut you up. Everyone's going to be they're going to be tempted, right? Everyone's going to be tempted. Am I wrong?
Okay, we've seen an example of what happens when an independent media network gives in to a donor and how they become neutered. And as Alison pointed out, how they then model corporate media, and that is TYT. Let's be very clear here. Fat Tony, Cenk Uygur, took that Katzenberg cash, whether you like it or not. He took Katzenberg cash, $20 million. Katzenberg, a Hillary Clinton donor during 2016, he got that. Now, we all have seen what happened to TYT, how they pushed out people like Jordan Sheridan and Jimmy Dore, who kept on calling out the fact that there's election fraud, that Clinton was a fraud candidate, and they were starting having boardroom meetings, copying everything that you see from mainstream media. And another thing, too, that we have to bring up is eventually they started canceling all their fun entertainment shows. And then TYT became more or less a mouthpiece for corporate media. But see, they had that little boost, 2016, 2018. I'm going to be generous, maybe a little bit to 2020. But for the most part, again, it's click, copy, paste, what you see from mainstream media, which is something that a lot of people abandon. Look, for a long time, it was fact by corporate media that there were WMDs in Iraq. For a long time, corporate media was pushing Russiagate as a real thing. And for a little while, the Hunter Biden laptop story was deemed as fake news. Now, what do we all know? Turns out mainstream media said, oops, turns out there were no WMDs in Iraq. Oh, yeah, Russiagate, Jacobin just made an article. Turns out Hillary Clinton lost the election, and it wasn't because of Russian bots, because Hillary Clinton was a flawed candidate. And I say this again, as a progressive, I'm not a fan of Donald Trump, but it turns out the Hunter Biden laptop story, that's real. That was real news, and it was censored by big tech and corporate media. So the thing is,
you hold on here.
But you did propose something like that. Someone gave me a big check. I want to look myself in the mirror and say, I want to be happy with my success and not be a cuck. And I don't want to end up like Fat Tony, Cenk Uygur, where, I gave up everything I fought for because I got that $1 million check, right? And while it's tempting, a legacy
$5 million is a lot of money, kids. I'm telling you, it's a lot of money.
It is a lot of money.
A lot of money.
It is a lot of money. But the point is, when you earn the people's trust and respect, and I'm not saying I get things right all the time, but when you build that trust with an audience, with people, and you're trying to call out the fact that there's something wrong with our republic and our media, that's more priceless than getting that money.
I got you. I want to go to Spike, because Spike, you go on all the media. Like, you are on all the media. Like, you ran for vice president. You've been on all the media, like from like some guy's basement, thing till mainstream and everything in between. You've been on all the stuff. Where's your head on this?
My head on this is that no matter where I go, I'm going to say the same truth that I know regardless. So I was just on Fox, and I'd say the same thing there that I'm saying here, that I'm saying in the Guy's Basement, which, by the way, Larry's not telling you, that Guy's Basement show, 10 million viewers every episode. No, so impressive. I mean, the reality, it's the Guy's Basement show is where it's at right now, folks. But no, I mean, the fact is, and it's Kit mentioned this as well, we have to remain true to ourselves. We have to tell the truth. And like he said, we're not always going to get it right. I want to go back to something you said about why is independent media growing. And I do think there's the aspect of independent media has matured and the audience has matured. There's also the technological part of it. I mean, we couldn't be doing what we're doing right now 10 years ago, much less 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, right? And it's only going to get more so as we go along. But it's also the fact that the mainstream media narrative, which is handed to them by government and its corporate cronies, keeps being proven false. And unlike in the past, where you had no alternative to the mainstream corporate media, now there are alternatives. And in fact, it's usually those alternatives that are exposing the truths. And after being labeled, propagandists and Russian colluders and conspiracy theorists, it turns out more often than not than we were telling the truth. And that's why it's growing. But yeah, there is a risk, as with anything, It's good to have as many providers of a service, in this case news, as possible, because that gives you as many different points of view as possible. But there's always a risk as something grows in success and the power that comes with that it can also be corrupted. Anyone is corruptible. Yep. So it is incumbent on us as both in our case, the providers of information to stay true to ourselves, but it's also incumbent on all of us as consumers of that information to be very skeptical, to always have a skeptical eye, to be very critical, even for people, even if I don't care how much you like Larry, when Larry says something and it doesn't quite sound right, you got to hold him accountable. Hold me accountable. Hold Allison accountable. Kid accountable, and everyone else. You have to hold us accountable. You can't fall in love with us. Well, no, you can fall in love with us, but don't
fall in love with us, please.
For us,
please fall in love with us.
Just fall in love with the way I look.
Exactly. Just fall in love with. Don't fall in love with us for who we are, but for how we look. What's really important.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. But in doing so, be cognizant of the fact that we are fallible human beings. We could just get it wrong. We might fully think what we're saying is right, but we might get it wrong. But we're also corruptible, and it is what it is. So we have to always be vigilant to tell the truth and to get as many information as we can.
This is to Kit's point, and I think Kit's point is validated in that independent media is less corruptible. And I mean that, not incorruptible, but it is absolutely less corruptible because so many people who go into independent media are going there for a mission, for a reason. That's why we're doing it. And if we were easily corruptible, then they wouldn't have to censor us, right? It's a whole lot easier to buy people off than it is to censor. It's a whole lot easier to say, hey, Kit, here's $500,000. Start saying how awesome Donald Trump is. That's a whole lot easier to do than try to censor somebody, right? So they have the money. They could write the checks. So my argument would be, yes, I think you're right, Spike, but I think Kit's also right in that it is harder to turn us if we're more independent. And that's why you have the Twitter files, and that's why you have algorithms and the whole thing, right?
Well, I don't mean to interrupt. I mean, I do apologize on this one, but look, Hardlands Media, my YouTube channel, not once, but 7 times we were hit by YouTube for quote unquote violating their terms of services and got a strike. And each time it was BS. I want to just name 3 examples. One of them was when my colleague Kira was reading about how, again, adult website Pornhub, trying to stay one step ahead of the censorship, stated that, because there was illegal activity with people who were not of age on their websites, right? And YouTube hit us by saying, we were showing explicit X-rated material, even though my colleague Kira was reading from articles from the Washington Post and New York Times.
Wow.
Yes, that's what happened. Yes. Another time we got hit was when we were saying how CNN was smearing Joe Rogan. Now, in that entire coverage that I did, not once did I say that ivermectin was better than the vaccine or anything like that. I was covering how CNN was smearing Joe Rogan, giving false statements about him, and so much more. But what did YouTube say? That I was giving false medical information. And the big one, and this was the gut check, our very first one in 2020, that systematically crippled our finances and so much more that we're still recovering 3 years later. Because I don't know what we look like if we would actually still be able to be on the high road that we still were on. When we covered the January 6th riot, YouTube, in its infinite wisdom, decided to say, Hardlands Media, you just said that Joe Biden is not the legitimate president. We never said that. We were covering how there was a riot taking place, how people were upset that, again, the Trump supporters were upset what happened with the election. But we were saying that this is the beginning of, again, further anger happening here in America. But not once during that live stream did we say that Joe Biden is not president. And to this day, YouTube deleted that live stream, and we are stuck with a permanent warning on our YouTube channel. And I talked to my colleagues, Faze and Daniel.
Let me step into this one, Kit.
They didn't delete anything. YouTube did that, and we are stuck with that permanent warning.
Yes.
And all those 7 strikes, we managed to counter them thanks to our audience and our colleagues in independent media. But the censorship is very real, and it's far more
literally. I got a copyright strike. I got more than one copyright strike on my YouTube channel because of the radio show that I was showing on my station. It's the radio show that I do. It's my radio show that I do out of Rochester, New York. So if anyone has a copyright problem, it's me because it's my show. So I was showing my show on my YouTube channel and I got a copyright strike. So who struck me? Me? I don't know who did. It's my show. And literally I got a copyright strike on my own show.
And you touched on something there, because no one actually reported that. That was a robot. A robot knew that that was copyrighted material, and the robot hit you. And the problem is the attempts to moderate social media are largely being done by bots. Those bots are being programmed by ideologues. So you have ideologue-driven bots who they might see a phrase or a part of a phrase or even an image and label you as having said or done something you didn't say or do. And then when you try to appeal to it, if anyone ever looks at it, then what ends up happening is that ideologue who helped program the thing is the one who looks at it and goes, nope, my bot was right. And but this is the problem with that is one of the many problems with how big tech is increasingly colluding with government and big corporations. And that's exactly what Twitter Files has been exposing, that down the line, and it's not just Twitter that's been doing this, Facebook has been doing this, Google no doubt has been doing this, all of this starting right around 2015. We went from a largely free speech social media where it was very hard to get moderated in general to the exact opposite, where now it's increasingly difficult not to get moderated, precisely because government figured out that their corporate media stranglehold was over, that with the exception of boomers and older, that's a dead media for anyone, Gen X, millennials, Gen Z. We don't watch it. So as a result of that, they're now saying, okay, we're going to put the same controls on big tech and on social media that we've had all along with major corporate media, and we're seeing the results of that, and it's not good.
Alison, you left basically the YouTube. Well, you're not left, but you moved on to other stuff, haven't you?
I'm still on YouTube, but I don't even want to say publicly like what I use it for, because I'm afraid they're going to come after me and figure out my business plan. But it's like a storefront window now. It's like for window shopping, but it's not my store anymore. It's like, I need you to just see my product, and then I want you to go into my store somewhere else. I kind of look at it that way. One thing that I think becomes a little problematic when we're talking about like incentivizing with, say, an alternative media you're going to sponsor, and they're going to then create more censorship or self-censorship because now you're paid and you got to pay the bills. You're independent, and so you're just going to not talk about ExxonMobil, or the other, which is like you're discussing getting shut down by the community guidelines. But there's this third phenomenon I think I've come across, which is very different than when I was in corporate news. See, when I was in corporate news, I didn't know our advertisers. Like that was never part of my judgment as a journalist. And I would say that was also probably not part of the judgment from a conscious standpoint of my peers. What a lot of people misunderstand, I think, about the folks who are like the cog workers, in the factory, like the journalists who are just pumping out the information every day, is that most of them are they're either manipulated by maybe those sponsors, they're manipulated by the propaganda that's out there by the government. They're true believers, in other words. They're not going home at night saying, I knew A, but I said B because I get paid to say B. Most of them really believe B. And that's actually the problem, right? Is that they don't know what they don't know. And I've always said, like, one of the more, I think, genuine ways to present the news would just be go on at 5 o'clock and say, thanks for watching the 5 o'clock news. We gave our reporters 2 hours to do this. We don't really have a lot of alternative viewpoints in this newsroom. So just take it with a grain of salt, and then like go into the 5 o'clock news instead of saying, welcome to the most trusted name in news or whatever. Because that's what they try to sell you on it. Like that you were the authority in news. And I think that's where the real problem is. Just say that you only had a couple hours and you didn't get to read the documents you needed to read, and you don't really know what you're talking about, then that would be honest, at least. And I'd be like, okay, that's fine. Because that's the problem, is that a lot of these reporters, they just don't know what they're talking about. And unfortunately also have huge egos and think they're the authority. Like they believe it. I remember back when I first started, I had a manager that said, he described our job as becoming mini experts every day. And I used to believe that until I started covering a beat long enough, the environment, where I realized that there were all these dark corners that I had never had the chance to explore. And that like you were sold as if this good and that bad. And if you question this, you're bad and you hate the environment. And I realized, wait a second, like that guy questions it and does things differently, but he doesn't hate the environment. He loves it. So it didn't really, I started realizing I couldn't read the Clean Water Act. I'm doing a whole report on the Clean Water Act, but I've never read the Clean Water Act. What am I doing going on television telling people I have any idea what's going on in this, right? So I couldn't read the Senate report. And I had one of my coworkers told me she'd been in the business like 45 years. And I said, I can't read the Senate report in time to go on TV. And I really am frustrated by this because I'm going to present myself as if I'm an expert on this issue. And I didn't get to read like one main report I need to read. And she said, well, just say what NBC has been saying about, because we're an NBC affiliate. So just recycle the NBC talking points. They're usually right. And she believed that, they're usually right. They all believe that. So that's a real problem, is that there's just so much like intellectual comatose in newsrooms. But yet at the same time with these major egos. Okay. So let me go to my point for the alternative media world. So
go on. I like this.
Sorry. Now you're in the alternative world. And you went from a place where like you didn't really know the sponsors. Like I said, that was not part of my reporting at all. I would never, honestly, I had enough integrity. I would never have done that. Now, was I manipulated by him? Yes. Okay. Absolutely.
No, but let me touch real fast. I used to sell ads for radio stations. And I never told to any reporters about who I was selling ads for. You're right. I never told them. They never knew who I was selling ads for. Did some of the talent and some of the talk shows? Yes, because they were doing the reads. Like they would read the commercial. So some of the talent that was like talking about like I'm the talk show guy, that person might, but none of our news people had any idea. I'm just kind of backing up what you're saying, Alison.
Yeah. Well, like the higher ups, I think eventually you get higher up and they start getting more concerned about the money. And so they do. But I also think they're still kind of in the same class of ideologues. So they may be making the decision based on money, but they're also because they just kind of believe it too. Like, I don't think that they're necessarily the smartest people who are like, because I really believe if people had that level of cognitive dissonance, like if they really knew A, but they were saying B all the time, eventually they would quit. I don't think you stay in that system very long. I think like, who was it? Noam Chomsky was basically like, you're in it because you believe the system. Like you're in it for a reason. You're not just here because most people anyway. Okay. So fast forward now I'm in alternative media and yeah, I've got a wine sponsor and a coffee sponsor, but
very good.
Right. Yeah, thank you.
Yes. Yes.
But really,
I've literally done the read for her. I have literally helped her move her wine and her coffee. Yes, I have.
Many times. Yes. But that's not, but the real issue that I found, like where the pressure point is that you start to get audience members, like you're now audience supported mostly. And they will revolt on you if they start to think you think a certain way and then you veer from the audience perception. And I found that to be one of the most damaging and problematic parts of being alternative news is that the audience will tell you that they want objective news or they which I don't really believe exists, but they want something different. They want a different perspective. They don't trust corporate news, but then, they start to expect that you're going to have this viewpoint on something. And then if you aren't following that path that they expected from you, like they'll just cancel you. And you're like, okay, well, wait a second. You don't want me to have all these sponsors because you think that's being a sellout. You want me to be audience supported. But if I say something you don't like, you rip your support. So that just puts me back into a position where now I'm going direct with the funding where I never was doing that as a corporate news reporter. But now I'm like, okay, if I cover this story and I cover it honestly, and I know my audience is going to like push back on that, where does that put me? So I found that to be, that's an iffy place. I don't know what you guys think about that.
I like to weigh on this real quick. So first of all, Alison, that's not your fault. So the blame that I'm going to put it on, and I'm prepared to be corrected on this. The reason why probably you might have audience members, or we might have all dealt with audience members who say, "Oh, you sold out," or "You're corrupt," or "You lost the message."
Well, you're not libertarian enough, huh, Spike?
Yeah, it has to deal. It has to deal with what we saw in the aftermath of 2016. I think the big one was TYT getting that Katzenberg cash, number one, turning a blind eye to the fact that there was election fraud during the Democratic primary. TYT wasn't really talking about it. They said, "Oh, we got to vote for Hillary Clinton." And then also you have to deal with the fact that TYT also did a fundraiser for $2 million for 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. They're going to have 4 investigative journalists: Jordan Sheridan, Michael Tracy. God, why am I forgetting his name?
They were doing money so they could actually have investigative journalists.
No, Mickey Kantz, and God, why am I forgetting his name now? There was a 4th one.
No, but hold on. What you're saying is they were raising money so they could get 4 investigative journalists.
Yes, and they did $2 million. And the thing is, all 4 of those people were eventually let go or fired from TYT. TYT more or less poisoned the well with that $2 million fundraiser that they did, but also the $20 million they got from Katzenberg Cash, ignoring anything from their diehard audience. Because I was there in Philly. I saw what happened at the Wells Fargo Center. There was no peace and love. Myself and my colleague Daniel, we snuck through the front door of the goddamn DNC convention. We saw Bernie Sanders supporters and Green Party people being assaulted and harassed in many ways by diehard Clinton supporters and the DNC establishment. And the thing is, TYT didn't talk about it, and we got to remember.
Let's stop thinking about TYT for a little bit.
I know, but they were the big dogs for a while. But that's the reason why we do see pushback from the audience, because the audience was abused. People saw that and how TYT treated their audience. So we are talking about sponsors, right? I have one too. It's the advocates.org, right? So I'm doing my sponsorship right now, right? Because I do have one too. But luckily, my sponsors literally align directly with me. Directly with me. Theadvocates.org. If you go there, you can take the world's smallest political quiz if you want to. It takes 2 minutes. Beautiful. It's free. All you gotta do is take it. And here's what I need you to do. Take the quiz. A lot I've taken it before. I don't care. Take it again. And once you've taken it, then share it out on your social media. It's free. It's 2 minutes. It costs you nothing. And it makes me happy. So make me happy. Take the damn quiz. If you go, no, I haven't taken the quiz. I don't want to. No worries.
Segue.
Wasn't that good? There we go. Yes. So now if you say to yourself, wait a minute, Larry, I've taken that damn test like 4 times. I love you. I've taken it 4 times. No worries. Head to theadvocates.org and click on the single issue survey. There's like 6 of them. They're all different. You haven't taken all of them. None of you have. I've been watching. So none of you have taken all of them. So take one of them. It's like 5 or 6 minutes, but it's free. Take it and share it. Why does this matter so much? It matters so much because it gets people talking. That is how we have conversations. They will go take it, they will talk, and we move things forward. And you go, Larry, I did it once, and they asked me for my email. Yes, they are a group that is for self-government. If you like self-government, give them your email, and you will get an email once a month about self-government. If you don't like that, don't give them your email. You can still share it anyway. No excuses. Please go right now, theadvocates.org, take the test or take a survey. Support this channel because you care and you like what's happening here. Also, something else. Follow these 3 people who gave me their Monday night. Head over and check them out on Twitter and follow them. Follow Alison Morrow TV, Real Spike Cohen, and Kit Cabello. Follow them right now. Do the right thing. It does matter. Okay, guys. Sorry, I had to go yap and make sure I did my thing now. But I do want to go back if I could. Spike, you hear this. I know you do. Kit's right. When we don't say certain things and we say certain things, people get upset. Allison's right. We worry that we might alienate our people who are around us. We worry about that. As libertarians, oh my God, we're never libertarian enough. No matter how libertarian we are, we're never libertarian enough, ever. But don't you feel that over time, and maybe I'm wrong here, but this is my feeling, over time, people get who you are, or am I wrong?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the thing is, and that's going back to being true to ourselves, libertarians are in the incredible position where we will bring in people who are on the right that agree with one part of our message, and then they'll be outraged when we say something they don't agree with. We do the same thing with people on the left who like certain things that we say, and they'll come in and be part of our audience, and then they get outraged. And then libertarians hate us the most because if we disagree or even are perceived to disagree with yet a single thing that they may think, then you're not a real libertarian. You're not actually a real libertarian until you've been told at least 10 times that you're not a real libertarian. Then Correct. You're a real libertarian. And so we're in a really awesome situation, which I think actually helps us as libertarians because we don't care. Like, I don't care that the vast majority of people aren't going to like what I necessarily have to say. Sometimes they will, but not always. And I don't even care that often libertarians don't like what I have to say. So it's actually a very freeing thing that we are used to people rejecting part or all of our message in that, yeah, we like the metrics. We like people to hear what we're saying. There's also a way to game that as well, though, is that you can actually game things not necessarily on the subscription front, but on the engagement front and bringing more people in by creating controversy, not even intentionally trying to create controversy, but by simply presenting something that you know your audience isn't necessarily going to agree with. And yeah, it's going to affect subscription models and everything else. And with any kind of funding model, with sponsorship models, subscription models, anything, any of these models, there is inherently going to be the potential for corruption. It is what it is. And the corruption could be very subtle. It could be as simple as saying, you know what, I'm just going to avoid that subject because I don't want to deal with it today. I don't want 90% of my commenters to be angry at me. So I'll deal with that a day that I feel like it, or I'm just not going to address it.
I have done that, right? I will admit, I have done that. I have avoided subjects because I just thought I can't handle the backlash right now. And I'll do it later, which isn't always working because sometimes I miss the spin, right? Like the spin is hitting
you miss that
right
cycle.
now. And I miss the cycle because I'm like, I just can't now, right? And I avoid it because I know the backlash. So I wait like a week and then I do it. And you know what? I've fallen to that. But I want to go to what Alison was talking about, right? Alison says, we could what about when you do things wrong or say things, whatever? And my point is, look at Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan made a mistake recently. And then he admitted that he made a mistake recently, said sorry and pulled it down, had it like edited the thing out, whatever. And man, did people hammer him for it. And not that I'm trying to kiss Joe Rogan's butt, but if you're listening, Joe, I'd love to come back on your show. But I'm not trying to kiss his butt, but I'm just saying the reality of it is if someone actually says, I screwed up, shouldn't we be applauding? Shouldn't we be going, yeah, thank you. You're human and you were wrong and you fixed it and you said it before people started hammering you. In fact, after you said you got more backlash, but you kept going. Why did that go away?
Well, the thing is, here's the thing with Joe Rogan. He has built himself a very large, successful show. And I think many people thought that was just handed to him. When if you look back in time, he started off like in a basement. Like the show was, it probably only got like 10 viewers back in antiquity. Okay. And now look, he's the number one. All right. He's the heavyweight champion. That's how it is. It takes, I think with human nature though, I think biologically, maybe mentally, if we cannot accept that we could be wrong, and it's a very big person, be it man or woman, says, hey, look, I made a mistake. And because we live in such a reactionary society with social media, there are so many people that just hate Joe Rogan just because he maybe had X, Y, and Z guests on his show, be they progressive or libertarian or conservative or anything like that. Well, then that gives them all the ammunition they need. It's like, oh, he's a bad guy. He's got to be canceled. When in fact, if put in the same shoes, all these people who quote unquote hate him or maybe hate our channels respectively, they cannot do it. All right. There's a lot of people who just want to hate just to hate, or they're envious because they lack the ability or the creativity to do a show, be it podcast, radio, YouTube, etc. There are just some people who just like to be jagoffs. And if that offends people, well, that's too bad, but that's a real reality. The reason why somebody hates somebody is because they might not be able to achieve what that person.
I'm not arguing with you, kid. You're preaching the choir. I'm with you. Alison, how do you handle when you get it wrong?
Well, like you said, I mean, you just got to admit it, and I do think you apologize if if it's necessary. I mean, maybe you don't have to apologize. You just say, "All right, I got it wrong." I don't know. I don't know. I just think just being honest about what you missed and talking about it, not like for self-mutilation purposes, just because I think that can kind of become its own show, So I'm like,
yes,
just say like, oh yeah, I learned this new thing. I mean, because at the end of the day, some of these apologies are just more. They can be their own theatrics, and I feel like if the point is just, hey, I didn't realize this, and I know this, like now I learned this, and I'm just going to tell you I got it wrong or whatever. I don't know. I mean, just so it's not like a big deal. Just move on. Like say you learned this, and then
Alison, you've got some fans here. Joel says Alison does a great job on our show, so you've got some fans who are watching. So I think that's a good thing, right?
I did post for people to watch. So thank you everybody who's watching this one. But
so you have some fans.
I do think one of the things when it comes to at least cultivating an audience who is interested in correction and self-correction and growth and everything is really, I think, up to the person, like, those of us who have communities, these online communities and viewers, we can create a community that's angry and irate and unforgiving because we are angry and irate and unforgiving. Or we can create a community that's curious and open and forgiving and growing it too, because we project that. So I do think it's partially, if not in large part, our responsibility. If we end up with an audience of a bunch of a-holes, maybe you're an a-hole. I don't know. I'm just asking for a friend, you know?
I love that because I have gone on some podcasts, and Spike, I know you've done this too. I go on some podcasts, and I go on a lot of left podcasts, right? So I go on some podcasts, and the chat is just brutal. I mean, just brutally hammering me on every possible way, just murdering me. Yet I bring that person on my show, and my chat's like, I'm glad she's here. Oh, so nice he showed up. I disagree with him, but I'm not going to call him a racial slur. Like, I don't do that. Your point's very well taken by me, Alison. Very well taken.
Yeah, and the reason for that is you and I are very similar, Larry, in that we are trying to cultivate a culture of people who can talk like they have some sense. And especially to people that they don't necessarily agree with. And I've actually had to, a few times, I've had to write posts and comment under threads on my posts and in my tweets saying, guys, be kind. You can disagree. You can say what the facts are. You can correct this person, but telling them to kill themselves or calling them a road tard cuck lib or whatever. Like, I mean, none of this is helpful. Like it's not helpful to constantly insult people. They're walking away saying, wow, I must definitely be right since that person only insulted me and brought nothing to the table other than personally insulting me. Clearly they've conceded that I'm right in this. You've pushed them away from our ideas wholesale and helped them to believe that they're more right than they ever thought before. That doesn't help anything. Going back to the part about admitting when you're wrong. I said, like, I think hours or days before the Russian invasion of Ukraine, I famously said, Russia's not going to invade Ukraine. I didn't just say it once, I said it a few times. And when that happened, obviously everyone's like, oh, you said they weren't going to invade. So I actually made a video, which to this day is the most popular video on my YouTube channel. Go check it out. Wow. After you go to theadvocates.org and take the quiz and go to the single issues, then once you've done that and sign up for the newsletter, then go over to my channel and check out the video where I say I was wrong. And I explain why I was wrong, which, long story short, I was not distrusting the Russian government as much as I distrust the U.S. government, and that was a failure on my part. But I go into the details of it, and I go into the details of how we got here. But I began it and ended it by saying, I was wrong, I'm going to do better, and I'm sorry, because I have a fairly large platform, and I need to make sure that I'm saying things that are true and accurate. And there were a few people who were like, oh, yeah, you were wrong, moron. But for the most part, the feedback I got, both from people who agree with me and people who disagree with me, was overwhelmingly positive. So, we have to ask ourselves when we're doing this, are we focused on the short-term subscribers, clicks, likes, and all the day-to-day metrics, or are we trying to build a movement? And if the answer is that we're trying to build a movement, then our focus need not be on the daily clicks, likes, and metrics. They need to be on cultivating a culture of people who are seeking the truth and being authentic and true to ourselves in all things that we're doing as best as we can.
I would say,
just real fast, I was going to just say, I think authenticity, you're totally right. I mean, I think that's what a lot of people pick up on in alternative media, and that's what they don't like about the corporate world is the lack thereof.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, good point.
Everyone's bringing up a great point about, look, Harlan's Media, there's a couple of things we got wrong. I mean, and the thing is, everyone has been wrong at some point. But I think, in this business that we do, you're better off just saying, hey, I made a mistake. I apologize. I'll be better next time. And here's where I was wrong. And I'm going to correct myself. And that's it. And then you got to move on. And of course, you can run into people saying, oh, you should be canceled. You're not trustworthy. Just keep on moving on. You got to be like Rocky. You got to take those hits. And you push forward, and guess what? Because we all have short-term memory, and the internet always brings up something new every hour upon the hour. Eventually, it's going to be forgotten. Now, I think what we have to remember is being authentic is key, and you're trying to build a movement, as Spike said. You got to talk to people and hear out different perspectives. When I've interviewed libertarians, I was told, especially early on, by a lot of activists and quote-unquote progressives and liberals, you shouldn't talk to those people. Why are you talking to those people? Well, I mean, we are bad
people. It's true.
Yeah, but then again too, I've been told by other people you shouldn't interview socialists. You shouldn't interview Greens. I've had activists tell me don't interview that group or that group. And the thing is, what I want everyone to understand is that when you say, oh, this show shouldn't do this or censor this, know this, other people are saying the exact same thing about all other groups.
Yes.
And I think You have to have an open platform. Look at Joe Rogan's show. He's had a wide range of people from the political spectrum and academia and so much more on his show. And that's one, building a movement. Maybe Joe Rogan may not know that. Maybe he does. Yeah, I don't know if he cares or not, but whatever. That's on him. Point is,
I don't think he initially thought that, Kit, but I think now he knows.
But if you're building something, guess what? No one's going to think the same as you. No one is, and how boring of a world that is to where everyone is thinking the same. That is a goddamn nightmare. I prefer hearing different perspectives. Now, we're not all going to agree, but I think we all can agree if we're building a movement with independent media and going to the original question about why it's needed and why we need to make sure it remains very vibrant and, more importantly, speaking truth to power, is because this is a tool and platform needed to inform people about the corruption that's happening in their community at the state and federal level, because Americans know what's happening outside.
Let me touch that piece. Hold on, Kit. You brought up something very important. You're right. And this is more, and what people don't get. Allison, you probably get this because you came out of this. Local news is dying. It is dying across our country. Local news is dying. You get like CNN and like some guy who's in the podcast. That's like all you get now. Local news is dying. And I think you've hit it right on the head there, Kit. Most people don't read a local newspaper. Most people don't get up in the morning and watch local news. They watch a syndicated national news morning show most of the time too. If I'm not mistaken, I think only Fox Network has a local station. Like ABC, CBS, the morning shows are all just syndicated across the entire country. So I think you've hit a very valid point. We become the eyes and ears of the local community. I mean, Allison, I don't know. I said because I know you came out of that. Am I wrong here?
No, at least in the television news world, I mean, you're right. The local papers are being decimated, but like in TV news, more and more, just because of the expansion of live broadcasting and cutting staff, it just becomes a recycling plant for the national affiliate. So you're just trying to fill time. You're a producer who's got way too much going on. You're just copying and pasting from whatever NBC says. I mean, they think that's totally fine. It's not like I do think there are some people in newsrooms who wish that they could do more local reporting, because that's what local news is really good at. It is like something happened down the street and you can see it for yourself. You know, you're right there and you can get a better grasp. But instead of taking these sort of topics like something happened in New York, but we're in Washington State, but let's localize it. Let's see if we can find a man on the street. That's, one thing we used to do all the time just to fill time. Like, this national story happened. Let's go outside Walmart, just ask 4 people what they think. And then that's like the news story. Like, this is what Washingtonians think. These 4 people who walked out of Walmart, and then we just like put it on television as if that means anything, has any value.
It's scientific selection.
That's
Walmart. Great choice. Great choice of places.
Yes, perfect.
I'm telling you, it's So anyway, it's just becoming an arm of the national corporate outlets anyway, and then that drives less viewership, right? Because the more people see that they're not getting much out of it anymore, then they watch less, and then that just it just drives the cycle.
So let's change that cycle of watching more or watching less. If you like what you're watching, then click that damn like button right now. Just do it. Click the like button. It doesn't hurt you. It's free. Again, I'm not asking for any money. Maybe later I will, but now I'm not. So just click the like button. It does matter. But more importantly, if you are watching this on Twitter, I need you to retweet it right now. Like this moment right now. If you are watching on Twitter, click retweet so that other people can see it and I can get more people watching and we can get past those algorithms that bother us so much. I'd like us to do that, please. If you are watching on YouTube, Larry Sharpe YouTube page, you can always super chat me if you want to. Now, that's the money part I was asking for. So you can do that if you want to, but not required. You can just retweet it or click the like button or go to the advocates or super chat. All are good, but do one of them at least, or you're literally saying, you hate me. I don't know why you would hate me. I'm not that bad of a guy. I mean, a little bit, but I'm not that bad of a guy. So please do one of those 3. It does matter. It does help. But I want to go right what I just said. The algorithm thing. What the Twitter files really showed, I think, more importantly, is that it wasn't just algorithms. It was algorithms, but it was also government. It was also people, right? If it was just algorithms, my assumption is I'm not a tech guy at all. Spike, you know more about this than I do. but there's probably would have been somebody who could have figured out how to get around the algorithm. There's probably some smart guy who could have figured that out, right?
Yeah.
But this wasn't just that. It was also government, and it was also individual people. And I wanted to bring that up. By the way, before I go, Libertarian Lady says Spike Cohen got on the Anomaly podcast recently. It was pretty dope.
Yeah,
so
that was fun.
People do love
that was
you.
Good. Yeah.
Yes. So Spike, I'm right. We could have got around just algorithms, correct?
Well, we often do get around algorithms, at least for a while. Like, I mean, we've all had examples of how we've been able to figure out, especially with memes. Memes are an incredibly powerful way to try to get around algorithms very often until they spot that loophole and then they close it. But this wasn't about algorithms. This was about the fact that, especially after the election of Donald Trump, governments, not just in the US, but around the world, went into overdrive to get their hooks into social media and big tech, to make them into partners, to fight misinformation and to fight crime and keep us safe and so forth. And really what they were doing, and the Twitter files has revealed this, you had Twitter, and again, no doubt every other big tech company out there has been colluding directly with the FBI, with the CIA, with the Pentagon, with the with Homeland Security, with basically every alphabet agency in the U.S. government and in other governments as well. They've been colluding directly with politicians. They've been colluding directly with major corporations like big pharma, like Pfizer and so forth. And they've been colluding directly in order to game and rig the conversation while making it look as organic as humanly possible, and not telling anyone about it and lying about the whole thing. It is one of the most disruptive things that has happened in the last couple decades, and they tried to keep it in a total secret and pretend that it was just, an organic, natural conversation that was happening. But those of us who have been watching this, and really anyone with common sense, knew that sudden sharp turn was not a coincidence, and it was not because of a organic conversation. This was obvious that government was doing what they've done since even before the days of COINTELPRO, which was to use the most the newest and most disruptive form of media, in this case social media, as their newest psyop campaign against all of us. And I love that Twitter, this is a unicorn moment. A multi-billionaire sunk his life savings into something that's likely to lose him money for the rest of his life. Hopefully it doesn't, but it's likely to do that. And in doing so, he said, you know what, screw it. Let's just release all the information so everyone knows the dirty laundry and sees what's going on. That might never happen again, or at least not for quite some time. So it is crucial that we get this message out there. It's crucial that we learn the lesson from it, which is that when you have government that is protecting us by deciding what it is we are allowed to see or not see, or say or not say, it is inevitably going to result in massive amounts of censorship and rigging of the conversation so that the lies are presented as the gospel truth and the truth is presented as a dangerous conspiracy theory.
Well, I got to go one step that I love about this, which you just said, is everyone talked about prior to this that it was only the right wing that was being censored. And what we found out, it was anybody who was non-establishment. It was left wing too. It was left wing, right wing. It was anybody who wasn't establishment. And what helped me, and this is going to sound odd, as a libertarian, I didn't realize how many people on the left were censored. How many people on the left were pushed, kicked to the curb? How many people on the left were shadow banned? I didn't know that. I just thought it's only libertarians, right wingers. That's all it is. There's no left wingers. The whole thing is all left wingers. And man, was I wrong.
Anyone outside of the Overton window. In fact, the newest Twitter files drop that happened today, I haven't fully read through it. I just looked at sort of the top line for it. It exposed how Pfizer was colluding, Pfizer and other big pharma companies were colluding with Twitter, and again, no doubt every other social media company, to censor the speech of people who were calling for availability of cheaper generics alternatives. Many of those voices, probably most of those voices, were from the left. So literally something very dangerous and deadly is saying, hey, maybe this drug should be available as a cheaper generic so we can actually afford it. That was dangerous misinformation and was treated as such by our corporate oligarch overlords.
There's if I could add in something here, and sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Allison, but real quick, in the Twitter files, it was also revealed that both the Trump administration and Biden administration were adamant in Twitter to censor. Now, here's the thing. Corporate media and the two-party system have done a phenomenal job in brainwashing the average American citizen into not thinking 100%. Critically. But what diehard Democratic voters and diehard Republican voters need to understand is that you are in an abusive relationship, and the two-party system will do everything it can to keep you in the dark, slap you around, and make sure that any dissenting voice doesn't make you think critically. Now, Matt Taibbi and so many other heroic journalists have been shining a light on the fact of what's happening at Twitter. And we all know the same things that were happening at Twitter. We don't have the Facebook files yet, but we can thank Joe Rogan for that interview that he did with Mark Zuckerberg, where the same things that was happening at Twitter were also happening at Facebook. So we know then, to a lesser extent, it's also happening on Instagram because Facebook owns Instagram. Then we could also look at the fact of what's happening here on YouTube as well with the censorship. The Twitter files revealed that, yes, okay, algorithm might not have played a big role. YouTube, it does. But there is the role of people. And again, this is something that's very frightening to me. And that is all these quote unquote leftists or liberals in charge, let's say neoliberals in charge of Twitter and Facebook. If given the opportunity, they would be just as brutal, just as tyrannical as Trump would be, because they were afraid that if any dissenting voice would go up against the oh so precious Democratic Party, that automatically it's going to help Trump win. Look, Trump was an idiot. He failed to do his due diligence to do any kind of job as a president should, just like his previous presidential administrations. They all showed that they only work for the almighty dollar, corporate donors, big banks, etc. What Americans need to realize, and this is something that I hope maybe they see from the Twitter files, is that when push comes to shove, the government, the agencies associated with it, corporate media, big tech will do everything it can to make sure that you cannot think for yourself. Now, we all know what's wrong with this country. We all know that there are some huge fundamental problems that have us lacking at being number one. We're not number one. We're number one in prison incarcerated population. We're number one in that.
We got them. And by a far, we're killing that one.
Yeah. And also, look, we're systematically shooting ourselves in the foot if we call for the extradition of Julian Assange, which if he comes here, I don't care whether you are libertarian or conservative, progressive. I don't care what generation you're part of or who you worship or the color of your skin or who you goddamn voted for. He comes here and he gets prosecuted and he goes behind bars. I don't know what this environment's going to look like, but if we all thought Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube and Instagram were bad, then yeah, Larry, as you said earlier in the live stream, then we're all going to have to probably be kicked off or go to alternative streaming sources, because that's the death blow of free speech. And when you lack a free press, when you lack true independent thought, that's the end of a democracy. But in all reality, we don't have a democracy. We live in a oligarchy.
Hold on. You're ranting a bit too much, kid. I love you, but I gotta make the next step here. Alison made the important point. She's like, I don't really use YouTube that much the same way. And Paula says YouTube is turning into CNN these days. And my daughter, who is 18, and my youngest one, who's 12, they don't watch YouTube anymore. They don't watch YouTube anymore. And that to me is shocking, because at first I was surprised. As my daughters got older, they didn't watch TV anymore, right? My daughters never watch TV, like unless I'm watching TV and they're going to sit next to me and watch what I'm watching. But they would never turn a TV on. That's like a thing they don't do anymore. Now, my oldest one, when she was little, she did. When she was like 5, 6, she'd watch like the Nickelodeon shows or whatever. She'd watch those when she was real little. But now she's older, she doesn't watch it anymore. And now my youngest, who's 12, she hardly ever watches YouTube. Is this becoming a problem? Are the Rumbles or the Locals or the Rockfins or the Odysseys of the world, is this the next step, Alison, or YouTube's still going to rule and it's just a flash in the pan?
Did you say what your daughters are watching? I didn't hear that. TikTok?
No, I did not. But most of them watch either TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat. They watch all the other things. Mm-hmm. They just don't watch YouTube.
I guess it depends on what you're talking about. Like for news, do you mean for news? Is it like going to be the news?
No, my kids don't watch news. They're kids.
No, that's what I mean. When you're asking about like, what's the next thing? Are you talking about the next thing for news or just for entertainment?
I don't know. It was just a question I thought of, because I'm worried that, to what Spike's point, a lot of people aren't watching CNN or Fox, right? If you look at Joe Rogan, to Kit's point, Joe Rogan's getting 11, 12, 13 million people at a minimum during his show. And Tucker Carlson, who's the top dog, the heavy hitter of late night, of nighttime news, he gets maybe 2 million if he's lucky. And I mean, so they're completely getting blown away. Mm-hmm. I don't really know what I'm asking you, Alison. I wanted to bring that piece up.
Tell us, Alison.
Yeah, just answer
Use your magic powers, Alison.
Just
answer
people want to know.
Whatever you think he's saying. It's like a Rorschach test. Okay, what I think this is where I'm going to bring up my psych background. You know, I mean, I guess for news, it's not going to be YouTube because they've already made it very clear that even if you're not controversial, if you're somebody who's covering news, you're going to have a harder time because they're not going to promote you because they promote the corporate channels. I mean, they just flat out say that you have to be an authoritative source for them to promote you, and that that's not someone you've never seen before. I think that was an exact quote from Susan Wojcicki. It's like, we're going to be promoting someone you've seen before, and the corporate channels are going to be in your subscription feed. And so if you're just getting into the news game, it's going to be a lot harder for you. So I don't think you can jump into the YouTube game right now and do what you could have done 10 years ago or even 5 years ago. I think even 5 years ago, you had a better chance. Like, I think I really kind of started doing the news thing, I would say early to mid 2020. And I think even I had an easier time than people who are getting into it right now and, you know, like late 2022, early 2023. I think they're going to have a much harder time, and it's just going to get harder and harder. So I remember who I was talking to. There's Kim Iverson. I was talking to her offline about some stuff, and she was the one who was like, I don't think news has much of a future on YouTube. If you're like just getting into it, if you don't already have a certain amount of following, I think it's going to have to be.
Well, she moved to Rumble.
Well, and so that's okay. So this is like the new really interesting thing is what's going to happen on platforms like Rumble, where they're now creating actual newscasts.
Yep.
And I do think that's going to end up becoming more. I'm not saying it will. I'm just going to say that format is going to become, I think, more vulnerable to corruption, to go back to one of our, you know, our former concerns. I do think like when you're starting to have, I think it's a cool opportunity. Don't get me wrong. Like, sign me up, you know, hey, I'll take the extra paycheck or whatever. But I do think while it will offer opportunity for there to be sustainable income, and I think, you know, maybe just a more professional presentation of all this stuff and collaboration, which I think is also really important. I think all that stuff's really good. I do think it'll be important for there to be just some, you know, people paying attention to like just making sure that it still has the independent thinking aloud, you know, and that it doesn't just become an alternative version of like the old stuff that we all left.
I don't see a decline in YouTube happening anytime soon. I mean, it's a very popular and successful site. Now, people in the live stream chat are bringing up, Patricia, for example, is bringing up Vine, MySpace, AOL 2.0, right? And they had their moments, but they failed because, one, they just couldn't meet up the demands of the consumer. I think if we're looking at Rockfin, Rumble, Odyssey, Locals, whichever of those four platforms is able to successfully do live stream chat and be on par with what YouTube's able to do, then we have a conversation of an alternative site. Until that time, YouTube is the big game. Now, you mentioned CNN. The only reason why CNN, MSNBC, or Fox are relevant is because, again, the algorithm and also people on the four different large sites, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, are keeping them afloat and making them number one because they're deemed authoritative sources. But we do know the fact that when push comes to shove, when they're on their own, they're not popular. And CNN was the canary in the coal mine with CNN Plus. Let that be a lesson, Fox News and BSDNC and CBS and ABC, that if they were able to do like their own version of CNN Plus, they would fail. CNN, a large quote unquote authoritative source.
I gotta push back on this one.
$250 million gone in 1 month.
Fox Nation is actually doing it well. Okay, Fox Nation is doing it. Fox Nation was sad. What Fox Nation did was
entertaining. Though.
They took their popular people and then started putting them online slowly, and they gave everything away for free up front. You could decide if you were a veteran, you got Fox Nation for free for a year. If you were a first responder, you got Fox Nation for free for a year. They didn't make you pay for anything up front. CNN wanted that cash grab right away. Fox Nation said, no, take everything for free, and got a bunch of people on the platform, and then started saying, well, now it's been a year. Do you want to pay? When people now got accustomed to it. They had a much better business model than CNN Plus.
All right. Well, then as for the other media outlets, then they'll probably end up the same as well. But you know, I mean, and again, wasn't aware of that Fox News Nation. So see, there you go. I'm admitting something, and I didn't know it. So there you go. Stand corrected.
Sorry,
everyone in action. Kit has demonstrated humility and learning, demonstrating his authenticity, and that he is focused on building a movement. And that's why you should follow
Spike. It's already too late. I've been canceled, so it's already over.
We are heading up on this hour, and Alison does have to run. She's given me an hour, and I appreciate it so much. Guys, please follow Alison. It's Alison Morrow. And if you're listening to this, is Alison with 1 L, Morrow with 2 R's. Don't forget that. Check her out on YouTube. Check her out on Locals. And check her out on Twitter. Thank you so much, Alison. I appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. I had a lot of fun. See you later.
Thank you,
Bye.
Alison.
Alrighty. So, yes, we are still here, though. The 3 of us are still here. We aren't as cool as Alison, but there's still 3 of us for a little bit. So, while I'm happy that you all, watched and watch all those things, please do me a favor. If you like what you're hearing and you think it's good, then click that like button. If you don't like it, don't click the like button. I'm only asking if you do like it, please click the like button. It does matter. So we can get past the algorithms, and then the people can shut us down instead. And if you are actually on Larry Sharpe YouTube, you can super chat me if you like, or if you're watching on Twitter, then please just retweet this right now. Just retweet this.
The piece I want to bring up while we're talking.
Say it again, Spike.
I'm going to retweet it since you said the call to action was that powerful. As we're talking, I'm retweeting it.
I have that much influence over people. It's true. So, Kit. You brought up a very important point that you got hammered by basically being shadow banned. I did too. And I didn't bring up like crazy stuff. At least I think it was. But it was during the COVID lockdowns in New York State. They were devastating my state. And all I said was, here is my plan to save people without locking them down. I didn't say lockdowns were bad or evil. The vaccine was nothing. All I said was, I did a 6-part plan on here is how we could still save lives and do things right without having to lock everybody down and no mandates. And my viewership went down 85% almost within 2 days. That's how fast it just went down. Boom.
Oh, yeah.
Devastating. I went from one show on just Facebook or YouTube, just Facebook, 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 views on one platform to now this will go out on like 8 or 10 platforms. I have to show this on 8 or 10 platforms to get the same number of views. That is how bad I was shadow banned. I had to multiply my platforms by 10 to get the same number of views. And it wasn't even that bad. And the only place where now I'm growing again that I can see like really strong is heavily on Twitter and on places, believe it or not, like MeWe and Parler. Like those places is where I begin to grow a bit. I don't know. How did you handle this?
Well, here's what happened with us at Hard Lens. So in 2020, I say we had a very high point. We were growing substantially. We would get 1,000+ people watching us on YouTube. Sometime in March, I believe, is when I got the message from Daniel, my colleague, fellow co-founder for Hard Lens, like, hey, we were demonetized and everything. We were at the point, this hurts to talk about because we were at the point of where we had the resources necessary to hire 2 field teams, a cameraman and a reporter, to go out in the field and do original reporting, which is what we wanted to do. Yep. When we got that gut check, that first one, we almost lost everything, and we're still recovering from it from this day. We had to diversify our accounts. We had to go on Rockfin, Odyssey, Rumble, Twitch.
I did the same thing.
We had to go. We set up a TV show on Can TV, and then we had to set up alternative YouTube channels that were different than Hard Lens, and we had to build up our own studio name, brand, and everything else. And I want to say that yes, we are getting back on our feet, but that gut check was so unbelievably unfair that if we never got it, we would have a different conversation altogether. And it enrages me just how much other content creators have to go through. And I don't like censorship. I can have a differing opinion from somebody, but I'll be damned if someone goes through what I went through. And what concerns me is that you have people in power who'll be more than happy to implement harsher censorship laws. Yep. And I think that what a lot of these, even people we might respect in Washington, D.C., maybe I said respect, controversial statement there. They're all on board with enacting these draconian rules, but what they're doing is creating the very thing that they're afraid of. And, you mentioned, Alison mentioned this, that on YouTube, even if you started in 2020, it was a difficult time. See, the establishment will show favoritism, though. If you're going to be speaking out against a narrative, hey, you're screwed. However, I want to pull up this guy, his name.
Hold on. Ken literally says no deviation from the narrative was permitted. He actually, exactly what you just said. Yes.
Remember when John Krasinski, Jim Halpert from The Office, had that little YouTube show of his, right? It was nice. But he never once stepped out of line. And you know what he did? He sold his show to CBS. Sold it for true? Yeah. Oh, you didn't notice?
I didn't.
Yeah. Oh, no. If we have time, I can look it up. John Krasinski.
No, it's okay. Go ahead.
Sold his YouTube channel to CBS, and all the people at CBS even did a segment on it because John Krasinski had Brad Pitt due to wet weather, and all what Brad Pitt did was stick his head out the window. Said,
I remember that.
It looks nice outside. Now, of course, those videos were nice and charming because it was 2020. The lockdowns were all nuts. I think we all went through that BS. But, YouTube showed a lot of favoritism because John wasn't controversial. He was always trying to be nice and make people feel good. And that's all. And see, that's what the establishment wants. Don't think, be happy. Oh, you're on lockdown, quarantine.
I think you're right. I think you're right. No, Soundbites Live says the only breakouts for news is either a massive exclusive break on news or recommendation from a larger creator. All platforms are becoming a better option slowly. And this is, by the way, No Soundbites Allowed is the name of a show of my friend Michael Voss, who will actually be on the show next week. He has the same issue. He's like, you try to do well, and unless you can break out, you've got to go to some other platform. And I feel in a similar way, like maybe what Alison's doing is the right move, right? She's pushing more towards locals, Rockfin, Rumble. Kim Iverson left. She's on Rumble almost exclusively. She only uses YouTube just like to do little clips. So you'll go to Rumble. That's it. It's like it's her advertising place. That's about all. I don't know.
Russell
I mean, Spike, where's your head on this? I mean, you're building out your message all over the place. You're killing it on Twitter. Are you going to be running off to Rumble or Rockfin or something?
I think we're definitely going to be building a presence on those platforms. I'm not sure 100% that we're going to just completely leave the big tech platforms if for no other reason than that's where the bulk of people are. But there's nothing against, we already have a presence on Minds. We're working on building one on Locals. We're working on building a Substack for You Are the Power. So these are all like important things to be doing. And it's good to be in these alternative media. Facebook was once alternative media. I remember when up until like 07, 08, Facebook, in fact, even past that, Facebook was described as a social media alternative to MySpace. And now Facebook has like 3 billion monthly users or something like that. So the reality is, these alternative platforms, especially as they continue to develop and especially as the big tech companies continue to slip and fall and shoot themselves in the foot, they have the potential to become the next YouTube, the next Google, the next Facebook, and so forth. But there's a danger there because Google's slogan used to be do no evil or do no harm.
I remember that.
Facebook was supposed to be the disruptive alternative to MySpace and all of this. And what happened? The same thing that, Kit was talking about with TYT and other alternative social media. You become one of the big dogs and suddenly you're getting that same power, that same money, that same influence and all of that. And again, people are inherently corruptible. But here is where a free market has a bit of a fail-safe for that. By constantly allowing for new innovative alternatives and solutions, by allowing for as much vibrant competition as possible and not putting your thumb on the scales to pick winners and losers, it allows the people, the public, the market, for lack of a better word, to be able to decide who they trust most, which platform they want to use most, what they find the most useful, what they find the most entertaining. And it allows them to go to those things and to make those choices and basically to respond to how well or poorly the various providers are providing their service. In this case, news and education and entertainment. And that's why independent media is doing well.
I can't wait till Kit sells out. I'm so going to give him shit when he sells out. when they write him that check for $10 million and he sells out and he's like, no, I think the Democratic Party's awesome. They do everything completely correct. They're awesome. I can't wait.
When you know that's when you know the pod people are real, because I'll be damned if I ever start permitting.
Just blink twice. Anytime you say it, just blink twice. They won't know. They won't. Hopefully they don't see this.
Here's how it's done, Spike. Hold on. This is acting 101.
Come on.
Hey everyone. This is Kit with Harlan's Media, and Please support the Democrats this 2024 election cycle.
There we go.
Yes.
Send help. I'm at coordinates 36, 52, 7.
Very good.
Send help. There you go.
I love it.
So,
I want to touch one piece if I could here. And this is Matt Taibbi.
Mhm.
If I could bring him up, because a thing like Twitter files, if this is 5 or 10 years ago, no way a guy like Matt Taibbi gets that, right? This is a mainstream CNN or Fox or MSNBC or ABC. This is 60 Minutes or something, right? Now it's Matt Taibbi, right? I mean, isn't that a good sign that we actually trust some guy who's independent, whether you like Matt or not? That it really isn't my point here. I know some people love him, some people hate him. But the point is, he is without question not tied to ABC, NBC, CNN. He's an independent guy, and he's the one who got this. Is that a good sign, Kid, or am I wrong on this?
Well, here's the thing. It is a good sign that Matt Taibbi got this, but you mentioned like what 10 years ago. Even then, let's say the Twitter files got in the hands of corporate media, they were never going to release it. I mean, let's be really clear here about the quote unquote Twitter files. If I can compare them to something, let's look at the information that Julian Assange heroically shared, and then also Edward Snowden. I mean, these were breaking news that controversial statement, are factual. We are being spied in by the NSA. Edward Snowden did that. Julian Assange exposed U.S. war crimes. And these were factual, true pieces of information. So I would compare those two events to the Twitter files. And I know for a goddamn fact, the way corporate media treated what Julian Assange released and what Edward Snowden released 10 years ago, they would have dismissed it. Why? Because the corporations need to have access to the politicians. Never forget. I forget which content creator did this, but it was ABC News. It's a guy who did that release on Acorn. Why am I forgetting his name?
I remember that. Okay, yes,
right. But he released that. There was a segment when ABC was supposedly off camera, where the journalist who was interviewing and covering the crisis, the situation with Epstein, like ABC News had a treasure trove of information of Jeffrey Epstein, and ABC News got a call from the Royal Palace because that deal with the quote unquote what was the name of the Prince Andrew who was associated with Epstein? Correct me if I'm wrong. Is that the name?
Was Prince Andrew? Yeah,
Prince Andrew.
Prince Andrew. Yeah,
right. And ABC said we can't do this because they wanted to interview not Harry and Meghan.
William and Kate.
William and Kate. Thank you. Because they wanted to interview William and Kate. So all this information, Larry, you bring up great points. This is great that Matt Taibbi got the Twitter files, but no, corporate media was never going to do anything with the Twitter files.
No, that's the point you just brought up. Hold on. I want to touch you. You've just made the biggest point. You've just made the biggest point, which is that if Matt Taibbi had gotten the other stuff, we might have got everything. Right? We might have got it. We might know the Epstein files. We might know everything if a guy like Matt actually got it. You've just hit it right on the nose. Spike, go ahead. You're chomping at the bit. Please go ahead.
No, this is exactly it. I wasn't really chomping at the bit so much as like literally everything he's saying is correct. Not only is it that Matt Taibbi was the only one that someone like a Matt Taibbi would be the only one to release something like this because media doesn't want to lose their access to politicians and to the corporate cronies. And in many cases, the corporate media is directly owned by the corporations or heavily sponsored by the corporations that are being implicated in a given story, right? But also the fact that the shift to independent media allows for us to be able to completely walk away from corporate media and say, okay, or at the very least say, this is where we primarily get our news now. And if the corporate media wants to actually get involved with this as well, fantastic. And we'd be happy to patronize them as well. But they're not the standard anymore. I was a little frustrated when Twitter decided to add the little official thing to any media outlets. And I was like, okay, great. They got their blue check mark. I got mine. You got yours and all that. It's fine, whatever. But like, why are you official? What? Okay, I'm official too. What does that mean? And I could see at one point where the only way that you could get information was if you had those press credentials and if you went to a journalism school and had the network and connections. We don't have that anymore. Some of the most disruptive news that's come out has come from whistleblowers, including Daniel Hale, who's in prison right now for exposing the demonstrable fact that the under the Obama administration and the Bush administration, that the drone strike program was killing 90% civilians, innocent people, both intentionally and unintentionally. And for the heroic act of risking his career and exposing all of that to the public, he's in prison for it. And so the more we can get away from government and corporate media, and the more we can get first source information directly from the source, the better we all are. That's the true independent media, is information, first source information, without even having an interlocutor or a reporter in the middle, just having it released to the entire public for the world to see.
Adding on to that, if people really knew, and I'm quoting Jimmy Dore on this one, if people only knew the amount of damage that Bill Clinton and Barack Obama did to our country, as well as our, political landscape and free press, everyone would be screaming bloody murder. Because look, we lost habeas corpus under Barack Obama. We went from 2 wars to 7. The people who caused the 2008 economic collapse got a little slap on the wrist. The criminals of the Bush-Cheney administration never held accountable. All right. We systematically went further corporate. And so when you hear corporate media start portraying either Obama or Trump or Bush as X, Y, and Z, know this. When you hear Fox News call Obama a communist, no, he's a goddamn corporatist. When you hear MSNBC or CNN say, "Oh, Trump's a fascist," or Bush Jr. is an evil person, no, they're corporatists. They're all corporatists. And the thing is, when you live in a corporatist society, you cannot break against the narrative, because the corporations and the neoliberal system is designed to keep people dumb, stupid, and happy, and not question anything. But how can you keep people dumb, stupid, and happy when it's impossible to buy 12 eggs or a gallon of milk, or fill up your goddamn car? We know that there are some things, okay, we all know that there's something wrong. It's like that scene. I want to bring this up. Sorry to deviate, but it's like that scene from House of the Dragon when the king is saying, "How dare everyone say that my daughter's children, my grandchildren are not legitimate?" And then his eldest son says, "Father, we all know that they're not from husband." Like, we all know. Everybody knows. Everybody knows. And that's a secret that every American's going to have to come to terms with and break out of the brainwashing of Team Red or Team Blue or trusting Fox or CNN or anything else. So, we all know there's something wrong.
Up that you've just brought up, which is the other part, right? Isn't this whole thing scary?
It is.
I mean, wasn't it a whole lot easier when I just go to my talking head tells me what's right and wrong, then I just agree with my talking head, and I go off to work or to my life or to my school or whatever, and I know what's right and wrong. My talking head has told me so. But now I got to worry. My talking head might be wrong, might be a corporatist, might have some agenda. Maybe Kit's right. Maybe Spike's right. Oh my God, isn't that scary? Don't I just want to say, "Kit, tell me what to do. Kit, tell me how to think. Just tell me how to think so I can just go on my day." Aren't we asking a lot of our people?
I think it is frightening where we're at right now. But the problem is, okay, on one hand, yes, we can blame the two-party system. You could blame the Telecoms Act that Bill Clinton signed, where all the corporations are buying up the media. But another issue is the American people's silent, obedient consent in not questioning what was happening to our environment. Where it's like the frog in the cold bucket of water that's slowly being boiled over a stove, right? The frog doesn't know that it's going to be boiled until it's too late. And that's what's happening to a lot of Americans, because we assume that the people in charge knew what they were doing. Just like with the economic disaster. These were flawed people. There's that scene from The Big Short, where the two guys walk inside an empty stock exchange, and one guy says to the other friend, "What? This is not what I expected." And the other guy said, "Yeah, I expected grown-ups." And the thing is, we have flawed individuals who might be ahead of the curve, but created something that I don't think they really understood. And the people know what's happening. It's just there's no one to trust. Look, we look at recent polls, corporate media and the government, these institutions that we once trusted, their approval rating is the lowest ever. When cockroaches, STDs, and other things that are disgusting are more popular than the people we trust, something is wrong.
Yes. But so, Spike, am I wrong on this one with saying, isn't it scary to have to worry about where I get my news, right? Isn't it scary that I'm worried that the guy or gal who I used to trust, to Kit's point, Now I don't trust them anymore. Now I trust STDs more, whatever you said, right? I trust that more than I.
Well, at least
I trust.
I know how you
got
it.
Said, right?
I know how you got it.
I trust chlamydia more than I trust my news person, right? Whatever. So
call me old-fashioned, but I want to be able to trust the STDs that are out there. And frankly, I'm disgusted by this whole thing. No, look, it is scary. You'll hear people that'll say, I miss the days of Walter Cronkite, or I miss the days of when I would go to the theater, like, hearing like my dad, or because my dad was born in the 30s, my dad or people older than my dad say, we used to go to the theater and we'd get the news right before our talkie or before our cartoon, and they'd tell us the truth. No, they would tell you what the Department of Defense told them to tell you, or what the USDA or the central banking system told them to tell you. It's always been this way. And we have both the privilege and the horror of being able to face that reality in real time with far fewer filters than have ever been around before, thanks largely to technology, and to Kit's point, the fact that things that frog water just keeps getting hotter and hotter and hotter. And going back to something else Kit said, one of the things that allows the ruling class to continue to do what it does, allows the status quo to continue, is the two-party system. Because even if, I think it's like 87% of Americans in a recent poll said everything is going terribly, they're able to blame one half of the ruling class almost entirely for it, and say that the only way to solve it is with the other half of the ruling class. And when you say to them, yeah, but there are people on that half of the ruling class that also do these bad things too, they go, well, they're not real, our half of the ruling class. They're rhinos. They're dinos. They're not real Democrats. This is the leadership of the Republican and Democrat Party. Donald Trump is not a real Republican. Mitch McConnell's not a real Republican. Hillary Clinton's not a real Democrat. No, maybe you aren't. And that's a scary thing too, is members of the public realizing maybe you're not the Republican or the Democrat. Maybe this system was never built to serve you. Maybe it's not just, politicians are corrupt. It's that the system was built as intended. It's working as intended to rob you and to fleece you. We use the term the fox guarding the hen house. And the reason we use that imagery is it's so obvious. You wouldn't trust a fox to guard the hen house, but that's literally what we have. We have the people that have demonstrated for decades, the parties, and even some cases, the individuals, Joe Biden, Donald Trump, lifelong hucksters, we entrust them with the hen house. And then we're shocked when that goes poorly. So that's a scary thing too. It requires people expanding their consciousness, and this is where we come in, building a movement of people with expanded consciousness who understand that they've been lied to from day one, and that the reason they were lied to is because there's too much power in the hands of too few people, and the only way we're going to fix it is by taking the damn power back.
Does that mean then does that mean that more independent media, right? Does that mean that more independent media means more independent politics and more independent parties? Is this the time?
Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, Spike, but could I just add?
No, please go ahead. Yeah, no, absolutely.
All right. So obviously, Spike, you brought up a lot of great things. Like, one, we do have to build a movement, but there's another thing that just hit my mind, and this is something that I've been told before. What we're speaking is true. Yes, the American people have been lied to. The American people are part of a sick system, but there just might be some people who don't care and are okay with the way things are, because it's easy to be comfortable. It's easy to not shake things up. And there's a lot of people that don't want to be waking up from their easy comfort, because then that means they know their entire existence has been a lie, subservient to something that was never going to help them out. It's like that scene from The Matrix where the traitor is talking to Agent Smith and saying, when I get put back in the Matrix, I want to be somebody important. I want to be something great. And everyone has lied to themselves that somehow they can make it in this system. And what we have, and this is even before Reagan, the whole entire institution here in the United States, while in theory what the founding fathers was trying to create was a good idea, the problem is that it was unable to adapt to the one thing that is inherently human, that is mankind's indomitable will to be free, but at the same time too, our own mindset to be part of a system of something that we know can make us or help us thrive in a society that we live in. And so in many ways,
it was Larry, Cypher, by the way. Mastermind knows it was Cypher who asked. And he wanted to be an actor.
Yeah, and again, Larry, to your point, yes, this is a call for independent media, more of it, and more independent politics. The problem is that there is a massive burnout with the aftermath of 2016, Bernie Sanders killing his political revolution, which is what he did. Shout out to Chris Hedges, who called it as it is. Bernie Sanders killed the progressive movement. Bernie Sanders ended his movement and became subservient to the Democratic Party. And Trump, for his movement, the only reason why he's relevant in 2024 now is because, one, he has to run for re-election because he can do it. And number two, ego. He wants to get control of the MAGA movement, something that he created, and he can lose it to DeSantis. This is all about pride. So the thing is, you have people in this country who might want to be free, but when they get it, they don't know what to do with it. It's like the dog that catches the car. Once you caught it, what are you going to do with it?
Let me grab a super chat if I could. I don't know why this guy wants to say this, but he wants to. The lie that carrots are good for eyes was in a movie to hide the fact that radar was being used in the UK against Nazis by U.S. government instruction to Warner Brothers. I think this comes from what you were talking about, Spike, saying that people that during the 40s, like they put stuff in the cartoons because the government told them to. I think that's where this is coming from. So remember how Bugs Bunny with carrots?
Big Carrot sold you on Bugs Bunny.
I never trusted Bugs Bunny. Never
there
did.
we go. Yes,
that man's got issues.
Any bunny that would pretend to be a man's wife just so he can get close enough to shoot him before they shoot him, or with Elmer Fudd. That anyone, you can't trust. That's a bunny. That is a bunny you can't trust. That kind of bunny has an even lower approval rating than STDs.
Well, what I'm going to say is his point is a valid one, and your point was too. When there's corporate media, I mean, I remember, look, I'm old enough to remember the first Gulf War. And the first Gulf War, I remember I was in the military at the time. I was training troops in Virginia to send them over to the first Gulf War. And the amount of civilians who told me, we got to go over and stop that guy Saddam Hussein. He's Hitler. I heard that like every day. I mean, like every day I heard that. And I was like, he's not Hitler. That's not, Hitler is Hitler. That guy's not Hitler. He's Saddam Hussein. They're two different people. And I heard it like every day. And then why was it? Because back then in 1991, CNN was everything. CNN was the thing. Whatever CNN said, we all believed. And CNN told us that he was Hitler like every hour on the hour. And they bummed them banged the war drums for months. And we all bought it. And this goes to what you're saying, Spike. We thought that they were giving us the right stuff. They were giving us what the government told them to give us. And that was it.
Exactly. And that goes to what Kit was saying. It is a lot more comforting. You actually, I think it was you, Larry, that shared this on your Twitter, a meme that said, the people, it's not that the people don't know or want to hear the truth. It's that they're more comforted by the lie. It's both.
Yes.
It's a carrot and a stick. And that's part of the problem, is that the carrot is this comfortable lie that allows you to say everything is going fine. And the stick is someone saying, no, actually, this is all a lie. And the only way we're going to fix this is by taking way more responsibility than we want to take, and not trusting anyone outright, and not expecting anyone to be an impeachable source, and always being critical on things, and trying to be as responsible for ourselves as possible and not on others. Holy crap, that sucks compared to just for most people, compared to just having someone tell you what it is and having someone take care of you. Yeah, that sounds way better for a lot of people, especially when they've been conditioned since before they were even able to talk, to simply trust their betters, and to be the font of wisdom and knowledge and goodness, to give them all things that they need. But the problem is, anyone that has the power of you trusting them implicitly in all things, despite all evidence to the contrary, they can do whatever they want to you.
Yes.
Like Kit said, that's the ultimate abusive relationship. And how many abusive relationships continue because the victims of those abusive relationships say, I don't know what I'd do if I wasn't in this relationship.
Right.
And these are legitimate concerns. I'm not undercutting these people's concerns of, I'd have to recreate my life. I'd have to get out on my own. I'd have to be responsible for so many other things. I don't know, for not just the potential punishment by the person that's abusing them, but also just I'd have to recreate myself. This has always been, there's
also social pressure too, right? I mean, in an abusive relationship, right? If I'm with my wife or my girlfriend or whoever I'm with, right? And we all have joint friends. and joint relationships. Maybe we go to the same church. Maybe we shop at the same Walmart, whatever the thing is, right? I know Kit loves Walmart. So maybe we're going to shop at the same
Costco for life. Costco for life. Man, what's wrong with you?
Now I leave and I lose my Costco connection. I lose everything. And I
got to get your own Costco membership, man.
I got to get my own Costco membership. But your point's a valid one, because now I have friends who also identify with me as being this Democrat or Republican or liberal or progressive or conservative or whatever. I got to lose those too. I think your point's right in the money. It makes it very hard for us to say, I don't want to be that person anymore. I agree.
Yeah, it's a big thing. You're recreating yourself in many ways. And the thing is, if you're recreating yourself, it's crucial for you to know, okay, if I'm recreating myself, what is it I believe? And that's why Larry wants you to go over to theadvocates.org right now and sign up and take their world's smallest quiz. If you've done it once, if you've done it 15 times, do it a 16th time. You might be shocked to find out what you find out. If you've already given them an email address, give them another email address. Because here's the thing. You might not always check that email. You might check this email. Maybe you got one email on your phone, you got another email on your computer. Sometimes you're not on your computer, but you don't want to miss anything that the Advocates for Self-Government put out. So join Larry in going to theadvocates.org, fill out the quiz, sign up for the things, find out what you believe, and then you'll be far more empowered to be able to do all this stuff, and it'll be less scary. But Larry, like you said, this is scary.
I do want to touch a piece from that real fast if I could. This is something that's serious about the Advocates. It's a serious thing that I want to bring up. The Advocates, as some of you know, do the world's smallest political quiz. Many of you have seen it before. If you were out, in some fair or some place where people are handing out, doing street vending, whatever the case may be. We've been taking that quiz for literally decades, and there are 4 things that can pop up. I'm sorry, 5 that you can pop up. You can come up either progressive, you can come up conservative, you can come up libertarian, authoritarian, or moderate. Most people come up moderate. Not the majority, plurality. Over 30% are moderate. And then they're all over the place. The smallest one, luckily for us, is authoritarian. That's a very small percentage. However, recently, we have seen an increase in authoritarianism. That's something for us to start thinking about. This is to your point, Spike. It's nice if people just take care of me. So more people who are being afraid, I think, are going towards authoritarianism. They're like, if we just had a good dictator, or people just be in line, or people just do what they're told. I think people are starting to think, because of fear, I'd rather have that benevolent dictator than to think of myself. And that's just a true thing we're seeing.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Kit. No, go ahead, man.
Well, there is the environment of fear where people want someone to think for them, because to think for yourself and to realize that what you've been living through is a lie. I mean, it's an overwhelming thing. And I think another problem is that think for yourself, but also when the corporate media gives us sensational news and it gives you your quote unquote affirming facts, where you're like, oh, I'm on the right side because I'm agreeing with what this person's saying. Take for example, January 6th or calling Saddam Hussein Hitler. I think the problem, and this is something I dealt with, I mean, maybe not dealt with, but growing up as a kid, early 90s, late 80s, early 90s as a kid, I'm getting that mindset of, oh, wow, this is after, you're bombarded with media information. United States is number 1 at this point. We're doing good in the 90s. I know that for a fact. I remember those times people were saying, oh, yeah, well, this is the highest point for America. But the thing that was always being presented, and this is something I remember, we're in the aftermath of what the challenges we face as a nation from World War II. And always the thing is, the media, the political landscape could never replicate the great challenge from that era, facing off against a real Hitler, or the fact you're going through a depression, where my grandfather said, I saw people die of starvation in the streets. We haven't seen that. Well, we might see that right now as a country, but not yet. But during that time, we haven't seen it in a long time.
Right.
And the thing is, for many, and I remember this during the high point of the Bush administration, when George Bush Jr. got into office, one of his advisors or representatives saying, Americans want to face a challenge. They want to face something. And maybe that was always in our mindset.
That's kind of true in a way.
But the quote that's seen from Lisa Simpson when Bart was confronting her about, hey, I thought you wanted a challenge. And Lisa said, yeah, a challenge I can do.
Oh, okay.
A challenge I can do. And that's something many Americans are used to. They're used to getting their information given to them by the press so they could face this quote unquote fearful challenge by trusting the leaders and then not doing anything further or investigating into why January 6th happened, or why this thing of Russiagate was promoted, or why do people saying that there was election fraud taking place in 2016 and 2020?
Right.
Because the thing is, when you challenge people, they realize that what they put trust in was always a lie. And that's the problem with being an abusive relationship, especially something that many Americans have been brainwashed here in this country. And that is, they've been trained to be subservient to what they are presented by Fox or CNN or by Democrats and Republicans. And if we're trying to break out of that, we have to remember that it's going to be a slow, gentle kind of awakening. And many Americans will go kicking and screaming into the truth before they walk willingly into it, because that means they have to challenge everything and change everything. I
got to say some off topic. You have some Costco fans here.
There we go.
King.
Good.
There we go. You do have some Costco fans here.
There you go.
David remembers. He says, I thought Saddam Hussein was Hitler. David, see, it's not just me. I heard that everywhere. CNN was one of the networks pointing out human rights, supposedly being perpetrated by Hussein. They were saying it every day. I was in Virginia. I was stationed in Fort Belvoir, Virginia. I was the Marine platoon sergeant there, and I was training Marines to head over to the Gulf. They were going to Saudi Arabia then, because it was before they were going into Kuwait. And I'd be out and I would travel, and every other person who knew I was a Marine, because I was wearing my uniform, I had the haircut, I was totally Marine. Everyone's like, yeah, you got to get that. He's Hitler. I heard that all the time. It's crazy. Ryan says, I still remember Bernard Shaw, Peter Arnett, and John Holloman reporting from CNN from Baghdad. Yes, that was the thing. And it was all lies.
Yeah, I was 8 in 1990. I remember like being around the TV and watching the green screen, that infrared screen and the bombs dropping, and the reporter saying, the ending of the threat against us by Saddam Hussein has begun. I remember being told that we had to stop Saddam Hussein over there so that the Scud missiles wouldn't drop where I live in Myrtle Beach. Now go look up the range of a Scud missile. That Scud missile,
they'll get you.
That Scud missile would have to be in North Myrtle Beach, just about, or maybe just across the border in North Carolina to Calabash to be able to get. But yes, if we didn't stop Saddam Hussein over there, by the way, all of his arms, all of the so-called WMDs and everything, all of that was given to him by the United States Department of Defense to carry out a counter genocide against the Iranians. The Iran-Iraq war, where millions of people died in a proxy war between the U.S. and its allies, the NATO allies, and Russia and its allies through the proxies of Iraq and Iran. And the very second that Saddam Hussein said, hey, wait a second, that was very costly, I'm going to take what's due to me, and he got mixed signals from the government. He had one agency telling him, yeah, take over Kuwait, we don't really care. He had another agency saying, absolutely not, do not do that. He finally went and did it. And then when he then wanted to pull back, then that immediately became the catalyst to invade him before he did that, so that they still have the reason to invade him. And meanwhile, here we are, while all that's happening, the same country that didn't want a war for like almost 20 years because of the lies of Vietnam and the horrific things that happened as a result of that, we were immediately lied to, and we were over here telling our kids that the Scuds were going to hit us here if we didn't stop the new Hitler over there, right? And this is what happens. A tyranny, the glue that holds together a tyranny isn't the tyrant. And it's not even the enforcers of that tyranny. It is the gullible and sometimes just uninterested or even just scared members of the public, who it's way easier to just believe whatever they're being told and stay in their lane and try to make ends meet and try to provide for their families and try to ignore the glaring inconsistencies that are happening in front of them. I think of the Nazis or the Germans in Germany during the Third Reich, being told that all the Jews and the Roma and the homosexuals and the political prisoners, they were just working somewhere. Everything was going great.
Went to Madagascar. Don't you know that?
Yeah, they just went there, just working. Finally they're doing something productive. And that was a comforting lie. And it literally took the firebombing of their cities before a lot of them realized, wait a second, I think we've been lied to this whole time. They were being told they were winning. The Allies are storming Normandy, and they're being told, yeah, we're winning. This thing's going fantastic, while they're watching things consistently get worse and worse and worse in a very, escalating fashion. But it was more comforting to hope to God that this guy that we elected that was going to finally, that was going to fix these problems like he said he was going to. He promised us he was going to do it. He said those speeches that moved us to tears. Please let what he's saying be true, because the alternative is to realize they're being lied to.
I got to grab a super chat. It's just for you guys. Thank you for the super chats. They matter tremendously. Thank you for the $5, Sarah. I appreciate it. Sarah says, have to say hello to Spike from the Juggalo Christians from Minnesota.
Juggalo Christians.
Well, hello.
Yes.
Yes. Larry, thank you for the incredible work you do. Thank you all for fighting for liberty. Yes. Thank you so much, Sarah. Thank you for the $5. Yes. I appreciate it.
Shout out to the Juggalo Christians in Minnesota.
Yes. Snort Y2K, thank you also for your super chat. I do appreciate that completely. So, yes. You went on a bit of a rant there, Spike, but you were totally right. I like what you were saying. I think that you went down to the thing that always bothers me most. What always hurts Americans, the number one thing that hurts Americans is afraid Americans. Yeah. Everything that we hate, we got because Americans were afraid. War on drugs, afraid Americans. War on terror, afraid Americans. Spying on us, afraid Americans. War, afraid Americans. Everything is about us being afraid. When we're afraid, bad things happen, right? So we have to be much more, we have to provide more comfort, maybe. That's it, what you said, a comforting lie. Let's provide comfort, but without the lie. How about that?
We got to figure out something. The COVID regime, the lockdowns. I remember making my first anti-lockdown video in like early March, right before the lockdowns really started here, because I was watching them happen in Europe. And so I made videos and said, look, this is coming here. We have lockdown plans that came out during 2005 under George Bush to try to combat the possibility of the bird flu start transmitting from human to human. They're going to dust this thing off, and they're going to use it. And here's why it's not going to work. It's going to recreate the conditions of cold and flu season. It's going to be absolutely nonsensical, and it's going to cause all this damage. And the initial reactions I got from people or the initial negative reactions I got were people going, you moron, that's never going to happen over here. They're not going to lock down. What do you listen to yourself? They're going to lock everyone down. And within a matter of a week or two, the next time I make anti-lockdown content, now that the lockdowns are being implemented, many of those exact same people were saying, you moron, if you don't comply with this, you're going to be responsible for someone's death. How many elderly people have to die so that you can exercise your freedom? It was the same people who said this would never happen. That's the stupidest thing I ever heard. And on a dime, they flipped because they were so scared. They were horrified that they and everyone they loved were going to either die or lose their closest loved ones to this horrific illness if we didn't do what the experts told us what to do, at least for 14 days. And by the way, that's why they introduced it that way. Just about anyone will tolerate something for about 14 days, right?
To the flatten the curves, Mike.
2 weeks. Why are you being so irresponsible to say that society shouldn't completely shut down for 2 weeks, right? And so a lot of people went with it.
What I meant was 2 weeks in like dog years is what I meant. I didn't mean two weeks in human years.
Not two consecutive weeks. This week, and then we're gonna go for a while, and then like sometime in 2022, then we'll be done. But what happened? After people realized they had more context about COVID, they realized that, yes, it's a serious thing, but it's not what we were sold on. And these things patently aren't working. The lockdowns aren't working. The mandates aren't working. None of this is working. And what's happening? They've had to back off of almost all of it. There's like a handful of restrictions left. And for the most part, they're gone. Not just here, but around the globe. With the exception of communist China and probably like North Korea, it's pretty much all gone. And it was because the people woke up and realized this isn't working. And the one thing I will say is that as scary as it is, you don't need the majority of the public to refuse to comply. Enforcers only make up about 0.5%, maybe 1% of a given population. If you can get 3 to 5% of the public to say, no, I'm not going to do that, not even violently resist or riot or anything, that just say, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go to the park. I'm going to, not be vaccinated. I'm going to do, whatever the thing is I'm being told that I have to do. I'm going to not do that. I'm not going to comply. It becomes effectively impossible to enforce, and they either look the other way or they just back off.
But the issue here, and I saw it here in New York, is that they will literally, and I mean literally, punish you and put you in Rikers Island, the most violent jail in the entire nation.
For your safety.
You have to be prepared to say, I'm prepared to go do that, and hope others around you will accept that and then support you. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm saying what you're asking is a big ask. It's just a big,
much easier said than done. Yeah.
Yep, you know, I remember when the COVID situation was taking place, I was still in Japan visiting my relatives. And, you know, I just assumed that it was going to be, oh, it's another version of swine flu or bird flu. Because we've seen that before. Yep. But there was something different about this one this time around. There was just this whole idea of, oh, it's getting out of control. And oh, no, now it's in America. And in many ways, when you look at what the lockdowns did, it took away a lot of small business owners' possibility of being self-sufficient. It took away homeowners, generational wealth to, again, pass it down to the next generation. In many ways, those lockdowns open up the pathway for the elite, the top 1%, to buy farmland, for the large firms to buy out more homes, and banks to buy more homes and property. And the thing is, when you have a population that's scared and is told to be afraid, you will get them to be subservient. It's like we said, in an abusive relationship, when the abusive partner is just yelling at them saying, you got to do this or else, the abuse victim will say, okay, I'll do this. Please just protect me from the danger. So I don't have to worry about it. And, you know, Spike, you brought up a lot of good points, but the thing is, and it's something Larry, you brought up too, how many people will be willing to ride or die or step up? And usually it is the radicals that will step up first before then said revolution becomes normalized. Because any kind of revolution, it sounds great on paper, but it's always going to be people from the outside that will be leading until enough people say, okay, let's do this in the full term and go full on resistance. Because there's an idea of doing a resistance, and then there's also how much support and respect and love and fear you have from the populace.
Absolutely.
There's two pieces though, right? AJ, thank you for the 199, says only 2,500 ATF field agents for 330 million Americans. It's a valid point, right? It's a valid point. But this goes to what you're saying, Kit. At one point, right, the enforcer says, I don't want to mess with these people, right? At one point that happens. This is to your point, Spike. At one point they just want to back off, right? And the issue is that some of you may not remember, I was around during Tiananmen Square. 1989, Tiananmen Square. I literally was off the coast of China. I happened to be off the coast as a Marine. Happened to be off the coast going to Korea at the time, right? Happened to be off the coast of China at the time. And so they're like ready to issue ammo. They thought we might have to go in and pull the Americans out of Beijing. We had no idea what we were going to do. We're all scared. And the rumor mill is everywhere. Everyone's like, oh, we're all going to go fight the Chinese. None of that was true. But that was, you know, the rumor mill.
No. There was an incident where, like, in 2005, 2006, Korea was launching its missiles, and one guy knocked on the door and said, hey, dude, you better boot up soup. We're going to go to North Korea and fight. I was like, man, get the out of here.
Yes.
Says no Korea.
But my point being, when that happened, there was a delay. And many people don't know why there was a delay. Why didn't the Chinese crush that right away? Because the Chinese were afraid that local Chinese troops would not fire on the civilians. So they had to bring in Mongolian troops. Because to your point, Spike, they were worried that if the troops refuse to fire, then it's over. They've lost, right? The troops,
it's over.
Your enforcers have to be prepared to enforce. If they will not enforce, it doesn't work. So they said, well, we're not going to gamble. We're going to bring Mongolian troops in because they don't care about Han Chinese. They'll shoot them all day long. So they brought them in instead to make that happen. And this is our point. At one point, when are the police forces, or to AJ's point, the ATF or the FBI, at what point will they go, you know, I'm not going to comply. I'm not doing it.
That's why. Go ahead, Kit. No, go ahead, man.
Well, you know, you brought up some incidences where, again, like, when will there be a point where the enforcers say enough? And it might have to be the point to where it will impact them personally. Now, there's only two incidences where I could think of where we saw something like that historically. Number one was during the American Revolution. Yes, the British fought American, revolutionary forces here, but who was leading the front charge for some of the bigger battles? It was the Hessians, the Germans. They weren't British troops. People want to remember, like, again, the Royal Crown, like, hey, these are our subjects. Do we
That's
want
the
our own
equivalent
troops killing
issue.
our
That's
own
the
people?
Mongolians, right?
Yeah,
They
yeah.
brought the Germans in instead.
Yeah, do you want that to happen? Then there's also during the French Revolution where French soldiers at the behest of the king was telling fire into the crowd, and a lot of these soldiers who came from that same economic background. Again, again, there were incidents where the troops literally had no choice but to fire, or like not fire because they were overwhelmed by the people. But how can we shoot our own people? We're supposed to protect them. I know some of these people. I can't go home, and if I do, I'm going to get jumped. So the thing is, that point, Larry, when enforcers realize they can't do it, it's when it hits them close at home.
Yes.
So in many ways, the reason why we haven't seen such a violent pushback against these neoliberal policies upon us is because, number one, there's not enough blood in the street. Number two, there's not enough starving people. When I talked to my grandpa, who's 96, who lived through the Depression, he saw what was happening. This country was this close to having its own political revolution. And we're not for FDR, at least implementing policies to kind of get us back on track. And of course, World War II got us out of the economic depression. Let's be very clear on that. That's what got us out of it. It's going to take a while.
You're talking to libertarians, right?
I know. I'm talking to libertarians. I'm not.
Libertarians,
Look. FDR has his own faults. All the presidents have their own faults. But there is a straw that breaks the camel's back to where people say, enough is enough. I want something more. And until people and enforcers say, okay, this has gone too far, something has to change, then we're in that scenario of what happens or what it takes or what it looks like.
This is where I often think that, we focus a lot on how the Second Amendment was made to hold back a corrupt government. And that's at least partially true. That was part of the reason why it was. But the thing is, the private U.S. gun owners make up easily the largest, if you consider them one, the largest standing army on earth. They don't even have, I think they're larger than like the top 2 or 3 armies combined together or something like that. Vastly outnumber the U.S. military and police forces and federal and state agents combined. It's not even close. And many of them are veterans. Many of them are trained by the Department of Defense and by police departments. And so, and many of them have been lifelong hunters, and they also have the home court advantage. So like on paper, if this fighting force, this people's militia, chose to revolt, it would last a matter of seconds, like literally, if it did. But here's the thing. The vast majority of that people's militia, of those gun owners, you could show them a video of a police officer beating an unarmed person to death, and they would go through mental gymnastics to try to figure out a way to justify what they just happened to watch. And it's because they have been so indoctrinated and ingrained with the idea that government authority, or at least U.S. government authority, home government authority, is good and resistance to it is bad, that for all their talk about my gun is for resisting tyranny and whatever else, the reality is they're a bunch of fuds. They're not there. They have nothing in them to actually want to resist. They are as caught up in the comforting lies as anyone else in this country. And the reality is, you could have all the guns in the world. If you've been mentally disarmed, you're going to get absolutely nowhere. There were slave populations in the U.S. who were armed. They would actually arm the slaves during chattel slavery to fight off to shoot away and shoo away pest birds. And the reward they were given, if they were, these are people being given rifles to shoot birds and to scare them away from the crops. If they were able to shoot a bird and kill it and successfully kill it, they got to keep all the meat. So where they usually ate the entrails of the chickens and the cows and whatever their supposed owners didn't want, they got to eat that. They would actually get the whole thing, the white meat, the wings, the whole thing. And so here you have very often a bunch of people who are being treated like cattle, who are being abused in ways that we don't even want to talk about, and who outnumbered their supposed owners and overseers, sometimes 10-1, and were armed, and they're sitting there thinking, man, I hope I get a crow today. If you mentally disarm people, if you so beat and abuse and condition them to believe this is the only way and that any other way is hopeless, it doesn't matter what armament they have, what numbers they have, or anything else. They are under control themselves. They are self-controlling. We were talking about self-censoring. They are self-controlling. And that's why it's incumbent upon us to wake people's consciousness us.
Michael agrees with you. He says, you can have all the guns in the world, but if you have been mentally disarmed, it means nothing. That's good. Yep. Taxing that for redistribution, Michael White says. For the people. You have a fan.
Yeah,
I like that.
The good of the people. Thank you.
You know, when we talk about people being controlled, it's it's a difficult task to wake people up from the fact that they are part of something that's not for their best interest. And if people are trained to be part of a subservient system, to break out of it and be self-sufficient on your own, it is a large risk for somebody to do, because then the question is, if there is a revolution, and that's a big if there is one, if the United States is able to make a recovery and we don't end up like Byzantium, we have to realize that many people will be asking or wondering, well, what do we do now? What comes next?
Right.
Because it's easy to say, "Viva la revolution," stop the establishment, stop the big bad guy. But the thing is, that's all great fun on paper. People can have adventures, and you can romanticize a revolution, even though it's going to be bloody and violent. There will be the romanticized version of it. Afterwards, people will get tired of it. Like, okay, I want to put my kids to school. I want a home. I don't want to do this anymore. So
I want to have a supermarket that has food in it.
What's the end game, boss? Like, okay,
what Costco membership still valid?
Yes, exactly. No, that is true. Is that membership still? And I guarantee you, after revolution, some dumb idiot will be like, "Hey, this stuff still count?" Because that's the thing. People do want to go back to a sense of normal.
I'll go one step further, Kit. I'll say it's even harder to even start that, right? Because for me to accept that, I have to accept that I was wrong, that I was fooled, that all the things I did, I see it here in New York with all the people who were just insane with the lockdowns, who were angry and nasty and mean. And like, there would be someone who's like running out in the Astoria Park where I'm Astoria, and people would yell at them. It's a 24-year-old woman who's surely, got every shot you have to get. She's not wearing a mask. She's running outside on her own, around nobody, and people are scolding her like she's murdering people. And all of those people now, they're having trouble accepting that they were wrong. And they're either ignoring it or dodging it or excusing it. They're having trouble going, you know what? I was scared and I said some things. And they don't want to do that. So I feel it's hard. Kit, you're correct. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm also saying you and Spike, you're asking a heavy lift, right? You're asking someone to accept that I was wrong for all this time, and now I got to eat that in front of others.
Okay, you know what? Obviously, look, no one's perfect. And yeah, I am asking for a heavy lift. Why? Because it's long overdue, okay? No. But because it is long overdue. We're sitting here talking about what's wrong. But the thing is, the first step is for people to step up. As Spike said, you got to build a movement. What does it look like? It means you got to finally step up and address the fact that, yes, we've all been lied to. And at many points, hey, we've been wrong. But okay, suck it the hell up. Someday you'll be dead and no one's going to remember your goddamn name unless you're some sort of rich celebrity. And that's the real truth of it. Legacy lasts. Yeah. And even then you're forgotten. Because here's the thing. A legacy lasts forever. Do you want the same thing that you're going through for the next generation or your grandchildren or great-grandchildren? No. The answer is probably not. And so, yeah, you do have to do the heavy lifting, but just admit that you're wrong. And now you got to look at the real problem. It's not the migrant at the border. It's not some homeless man in the street. It's not some person asking for an increase in pay. It's not some young person of Gen Z. It's not somebody, a boomer, people who are working in the system. The people causing the problem, the main bad guys, are the people in Washington, D.C. We got the criminals running the show. The mental asylum patients are running the goddamn asylum. And so that means you do have to do the heavy lift. And if that's too much to ask, too bad, because we have been subservient and obedient to allowing it to happen in the first place. You only allow somebody to smack yourself in the face if you just say, okay, I'll take it. Okay, I'm going to stop hitting myself. I'm going to stop hitting myself. No. You have to push back, and that means you got to get angry.
Put some data up for you.
Blood. You got to face off blood, anger, and yes, hatred. And if you can't take it, well, then you got to step out of the way, because when people want to fight for a better future, and you're not going to do jack, then what the fuck are you talking about?
All right, let me give some data, because someone's paying attention, Spike. Mike Vass says approximately 135 million gun owners in the U.S., about 4 times as much as the top 10 countries' combined militaries.
And every single day, cops pull those people over, harass them, and give them $100 plus tickets for improperly changing lanes, and they get thanked for it. So that's the reality of this. The reality of this is that people are mentally disarmed. you and Kit have both said this is a huge ask that we're asking of people. I'm actually going to go a little further, and I'll have to end on this because I am under the tyranny of my beloved wife, and she's
freedom.
been waiting all day for
freedom.
Just
look in the eye and say, "Look, freedom." Good luck.
Freedom. I'll be sure to have you do that. No, she's been very patient because I've been doing interviews all day, but I want to end on this. I have a slightly bigger ask for everyone. Once you have expanded your consciousness, once you have recognized what the problem is, once you are ready to fight, you have to convert others. You have to bring other people into this. And the best way that you can do that is to be a living representation of what liberty is. You need to be someone who people look at what you do and they're inspired to join you. You have to, I would recommend go out and read How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie, but you have to, I know Larry loves that. You have to be someone that people are inspired by, that people want to emulate and be like. You need to be the next person that they look to for that level of comfort and trust and knowledge of knowing that you're doing the right thing. And you have to not abuse it. You have to use it for good. You have to recognize that we have to take this power back, that we have to empower people, that we have to decentralize power and authority, that we have to allow for as free of a market as possible so that we can have as many different things. And that starts with you. That starts with you meeting people where they are, understanding their concerns and empathizing with them, and then taking them on the journey for how liberty fixes this, how freedom fixes this. And you can do that by following people like me and like Larry and like Kit. You can do that by joining You Are the Power at youarethepower.net. I had to do a shameless plug. You can do that.
Go ahead. Absolutely.
The advocates.org. All of this. You can do this by going into the comments right now with other like-minded people and making connections there. Do that. Build your tribe, build your movement and your network, and you will be amazed at the things that you can do. And again, Larry, thank you so much as always. I love you, man. Thank you for having me on. Kit, great talking with you. Great to meet you. I think it's great what you're doing. And folks, thank you for tuning into this. Follow Larry, like, subscribe, hit the bell. Don't miss a thing Larry's doing. Make sure to hit the bell if you're on YouTube, because when Larry goes live or puts up something new, I want your phone to literally explode with notifications. Correct. I want you to wake up to the notification at 3 a.m. that Larry is live right then. I don't know why he'd be live. You're not going to believe why Larry's live. And that's why you need to sign up today, subscribe, hit the bell, go over to Hard Lens Media and be sure to subscribe to them. Go to Spike Cohen, subscribe to me as well. And guys, thanks again. Have a great rest of your night. Love you.
Spike, good seeing you, my friend, brother. Thank you so much.
Good to see you too, man. Thank you.
Yes.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
And Sarah's saying,
let me ask you, Kit.
Yeah,
let me ask you, how do people get a hold of you at Hard Lens?
Okay, well, obviously for Hard Lens Media, you could reach out to me, private message me on Twitter, of course. We do have our YouTube page as well. You could contact us via email. And
there we go.
I'm always open to have robust conversations with individuals who think differently. I've had libertarians on my show. I've had ballot initiative people on my show, communists, socialists, Greens. It doesn't really matter. I mean, I'm always open to having, different people, different perspectives on my show. Larry, you were on my show. Okay.
100%.
And the thing is, if you want to fight for a better future, obviously, number one, everyone that watches the show, take away what we said. All right. And ascertain some of the information for yourself and come to your own conclusions. A lot of you may not agree with things we have said. Some of you might agree with things we've said, but the social responsibility now is that when you are a consumer of independent media is yes, absorb the information, but also fact check it yourself, because I say this to my audience. I know that they are smart enough to come up with their own conclusions. They're watching my show to get information, not just to get affirmed in facts, but also, okay, you brought up something and I'm going to be independent and socially responsible myself to look up this information, fact check it, and come to my own conclusions too. Because as soon as we have more free thinking, self-sufficient, independent minds starting to wake up, we might be able to break out of the system. Now, this will be an uphill mountain climb because the establishment will not back down. But as soon as we start breaking things down, and as soon as our people are breaking away from what is being spoon-fed to us, we can fight for a better future. And that's why Hard Lens Media is live every Monday through Friday at 4 p.m. Central Standard Time on YouTube, Odyssey, Rockman, Rumble, and Twitch. There you go. Shameless plug right there.
No, happy to have it. Kit, I want to say thank you so much for coming again. I appreciate you coming back on the show again. And the time you gave me 2 hours. Thank you, my friend. I appreciate it.
That's fine. Can I add one more thing? last person standing. I beat Allison and Spike. So there
You
go.
did. It's true. You did. Last person. That's very true. Yes.
There you
Guys,
go.
thank you so much for watching this evening. Thank you for giving me the time that you get. I will be on tomorrow at 1 p.m. doing Sharpe Way Radio. I'll be there doing out of Rochester, New York. And then I'll also be on again at 7 p.m. tomorrow. So I'll be seeing you all